Crazy world of college admissions. So I'll answer your first question first. I got into college consulting because my oldest son came home from eighth grade and said, Mom, I know exactly what I want to do, and I know exactly where I want to go. And I was like, I changed my major 5 times. I have no clue how that happened. And so I took him to his high school counselor and I said, now you tell her what you told me. I don't want to be that parent. And he said, I want to be a brain surgeon at a top tier school. And she looked at him and said, why would you waste your time doing that? They don't make money anymore. And that's when my mama bear came out. Yeah, that look, Risa, that was the look I gave her. Like, one, did you say that out loud? And two, do you want to get hurt? Because that's his dream. He's like 9 years, ninth grade, he's just a little guy. So for 4 years, I went back to school, got my master's degree in college consulting on top of my regular full-time job. And then he actually did what I recommended. So that's the actually did part that I always have to have the caveat. And he had 7 full ride offers to top tier schools. He ended up going to Harvard 4 years for free. He then went on to UC San Diego Medical School and just graduated at age 26 as a doctor, heading off to do orthopedic surgery at UCLA. So there's an example of a rare gem, because I will tell you, in the last 12 years, I have met all kinds of students. And so the reason why I love to do these forums is because I have pretty much had any and every kind of student that you can imagine, and I love them all. They all have their gifts and their talents. I work with students from a 3.0 all the way to a 5.0 and everything in between. They all have the perfect match college. And so I meet them where they're at and we move forward from there. So to answer your second question, when is the best time to get started? We actually start with our students when they promote from 8th grade. The summer going into high school is the best time to start. And we charge the same. So that way we encourage people to start earlier and we gently give them the information. Now, the reality is that most people don't find me that early unless it's a second child situation and they're already looking for a college consultant. And so wherever they find us, we pick them up, we catch them up, and we move forward. During COVID, it got real crazy for a while because the class of 2021 was left to fend for themselves. And I happily report that my class of 2021 earned $7.8 million in scholarships based on their merit, not on need-based. So we were able to really help them out and pick them up where they were. We use COVID as the gift of time, not as the nasty monster in the room, but we turn lemons into lemonade is how we talk about it. So whenever somebody finds us is the best time, but ultimately, if you do it when they promote from 8th grade, that whole summer before is the added bonus, and they haven't made any mistakes. So hopefully that answers the question.
That does. That's awesome. I love that story about your son. That's amazing.
Yeah, still surprises me. But it came from me. Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like one of the major questions is testing, right? You and I have talked about that. Like I've heard the term test optional, but is it really optional? Like if 10 kids are doing it and 5 kids aren't, like aren't they gonna favor the 10 kids that are doing the testing versus, can you talk about that?
Yeah, this is a really hot topic right now. And it was very challenging because students were told that colleges would be test optional and they did not prep and they did not test and they just were kind of happy about it. They were not disappointed that there was no testing going to be happening. What has come to be true is the students who did not test were not as successful and they did not get scholarships because the fastest way to a scholarship is with a test score. And so students are at a huge disadvantage. What has happened is the media got a hold of it and were accusing colleges as not being fair because students did not have access to the internet in certain parts of the country. So they made it optional, but I have challenged people to tell me how optional is it if there is a box and one of you puts a 36 ACT score and the other one puts it empty. They don't cover their eyes and say, I did not see that perfect score. Now they have to make a decision. Can they truly let it go and pretend they didn't see it and not count it? Or we all know we're human beings. That is a very big request to ask. So in reality, test blind where there is no box is really the only safe bet, but that is very few colleges. And that is a big problem. The other thing we ran into during COVID is people were signing up and they were getting canceled. Unfortunately, people did not have the knowledge on how to take the test. All of our students took the test several times during COVID while being safe. You cannot take it at a public high school because they're the first ones to say, nope, got to close the doors, can't do it. Or if you go to a private high school who is being paid to host it, there's an incentive. And then if you go outside of a busy city and you go more rural, like Riverside or Indio or Lake Havasu, there's plenty of test sites. I mean, my stepdaughter did Lake Havasu 2 weeks ago, and there were 4 people in there with her. So it really was, people almost wanted it to be true and then found out that maybe it's not so true. And so we have used it as a strategy. And this is something that, here's your first secret tip. If a student is applying to a school that is above their GPA and above what they could score their test on, do not show their test score. It will not help them. If they're at a school that is comfortable and that test score can help them, you show it. So you got to be strategic where to show it and where to hide it. Test anxiety is real, and not every student does their due diligence in preparing for the testing. So it is a very important topic, but it is one, if you want to go debt free, that's how both of my students did it.
So when you're talking about, testing and what you should show and what are colleges looking for? Like there are so many colleges with so many niches or, just things they're looking for.
So the important question is you have to almost divide it up into tiers. So California state schools or any state school is going to be no essay. And so that's even going to put a higher percentage of weight on that GPA. So if there is only a GPA and no test score, now everything is going to be on that GPA. Now at a UC school or a university at another state, we have students all over the globe. It's going to be different. If it's at a top or middle tier school, then they're going to look at first the GPA and the amount of rigor in that GPA. Then they're going to look at the essay. The essay was more important this year than any year prior because they were trying to give students the benefit of the doubt if they didn't have a test score. So usually it's always been GPA, test score, community service, leadership, extracurricular, essay. This year, essay jumped to spot number 2, and they looked at they call it an all-inclusive student versus just dividing them up. Really, it came down to how will they stand out? In other words, somebody's going to have the same GPA and the same test score. What do you do then? Right? How will they stand out? They have 4 minutes to review a student's application and essay. So if that is not absolutely the best possible representation of a student, then they're not even going to go further down the list. So making sure that that student has their list in order of importance is a critical piece to what colleges are looking for, because they can't count on just one or two elements. They have to really look at letters of recommendation. Used to be seventh, now they're third. Now think about these kids who have been online and didn't get to really like get close with their teacher. How will they write this letter of recommendation? So here's another brilliant tip for you for being here tonight. You want to make sure your student has a brag sheet or a resume of everything they've done, and they need to give that to the teacher who's going to be recommending them, because then they know everything about the student and they can write so much better than just they raised their hand in class and participated. That's just not going to wow anybody. But they can speak to, you know, the student was always on their way to varsity soccer and they managed to fit in getting an A in my class. And it just allows them to get a lot better understanding of the student. The other thing it does is it rises them to the top of the pile. Because think about it, if you were a teacher writing all these letters of recommendation and somebody gave you a cheat sheet, whose are you going to do first when you're really fresh? You're going to do that one that's like, dang, this is easy. This student just gave me everything I need to be successful. So those are some hints that will really help you. But things that were never as critical, I mean, they've always been important, but now they're much more critical. The essay is so important. Do not let that student submit an essay without having an editor make sure that it's grammatically correct, because they're so used to texting. It is not at a level that it needs to be, I guarantee you.
So a couple questions from the group. So Risa says, which specific testing? I'm guessing you mean which ones do they need and which ones do they not need? Which ones are the most important?
Yeah, the very most important are AP exams. Those are not optional. They have never been optional and they will not be optional. So if your student took the test, if the student took the class, they need to take the test, even if they don't feel that they're prepared, because it shows the university that they don't think they learned anything if they don't take it. So it's an automatic bad mark for them. So number one is that. Number two is the PSAT. That is not optional. That is the one that can get them a National Merit Scholar. I have 2 students this year that made it all the way to the finals and they got a free UC education from one test they took their junior year. Wow. Then it comes to the SAT and the ACT. In all reality, the way we do it is we give the students a diagnostic test. We then time it. We compare the test scores. We analyze which one is the best test, and then we only prep to the one test. These students do not need to be doing both tests. It gives them no benefit whatsoever. So when to take it, as far as what time of the year and how many times to take it, is very important, because super score is real. That's where they take the best score from each test. So they can have an English from test 1, a math from test 2, and they put it all together and they get this awesome super score. So if your student only took it one time, they're competing with somebody who's done it multiple times. What's the reality? The reality is the multiple times probably going to have a better score.
Yeah.
Subject tests are no longer going to be looked at. Those have been phased out, so you no longer have to worry about those. IB exams, if any of your students are in the International Baccalaureate program, those tests need to be taken. Am I missing any?
Elisa has a question about letters of recommendation. Do you need a letter of recommendation for state schools?
Not in California, but outside of California, yes.
Okay, interesting.
So it's not one size fits all. Even in California, This year, it was harder to get into San Diego State than it was to get into UCI. So knowing that, it's counterintuitive. You're thinking it's just a state school. Well, in reality, it is the number one most overcrowded school in the United States state program. They've capped the units to 16 units a semester. So you can do the math, you cannot get out in 4 years. So it may sound cheaper on looking at the number, but add 2 more years to that number. And now you're like, well, wait a minute. Do I really want my kid to spend 6 years to get a 4-year degree? That doesn't make much sense.
Right.
So you have to be careful. Cal State Fullerton, Cal State Long Beach, even our community colleges right now, we have a 6% rate where they go on to get a 4-year degree because kids cannot get their classes. So the overcrowding and overpopulation is making it very challenging to do it the way we could do it years prior.
Interesting. Very interesting. That makes sense. The overcrowding. I've heard of people like, I was supposed to graduate last semester and I couldn't get my class, and here we are.
Yeah.
That sucks. Okay. So Elisa, you may have answered this already, but I don't think. Elisa said, "Can you take PSATs junior year?" I think you had mentioned that, and she's like, "Really? You can
Yeah.
do it?"
You could even do it during COVID. They actually gave another test in January. So they let the students, the juniors, do it twice, have 2 different options. That's very uncommon. Usually it's October of the junior year. My students take it their freshman year, their sophomore year, and the money round is their junior year. I tell them it's like riding the bike. The first time you ride the bike, it's terrifying, which is the first time you take the PSAT. Then you take off the training wheels. It's still a little scary. And then you're ready to, do wheelies by the time you're a junior. So it's hugely beneficial if they see the test multiple times and can prepare. That will give them a competitive edge.
So Marjan asked, let's see, SAT has a math score and an English score. Remind us what ACT covers.
Same exact, everything is the same. And there's something called an optional essay. Again, be very careful with the word optional. If somebody writes a magnificent essay and somebody doesn't, it's really sending the wrong message. And when a student reads the word optional, it's kind of like, did they really mean for me to take the laundry out of the hamper? Their mind is working like, wait a minute. Wait. They just said to take the clothes out of the dryer, not really fold it and put it away. So you have to kind of be the adult and say optional is really only optional if you don't want to go there. That's what optional is.
Right.
Yeah.
So what about kids that aren't good at writing essays? What should they do?
Yeah. So the one, it's a life skill they need. So I would truly recommend that they spend time with a writing coach. We have a tutoring division of College Ready where we have essay coaches that just help them to understand. It's like no other essay they've ever written in high school. This essay has to grab the attention in the first paragraph or they will not read the rest. And so high school's teachers are looking at grammatically correct, but they're not looking at structurally correct for an essay for college. So students who are not really genius at it or gifted at it, it's like anything else. The first time you kick a soccer ball, you can't do it with both feet until you try it with both feet. So I let these students understand that it's okay not to be good at it yet, but don't go into life not good at writing. It will just make life harder.
Yeah.
So I encourage them to keep going.
That's awesome. So you had mentioned something, and if anybody else has any questions, please feel free to jump in. But there are a couple buzzwords that you had shared with me. What is Passion with a Purpose project?
So Passion with a Purpose project is really what College Ready was founded on. Everybody wants to know, how did I get my son into Harvard? Well, I just explained how he did the work. And it started with the passion with purpose. He was very, very busy, like most students. And he got to the end of his junior year. And I said, how many service hours do you have? And he said, I did great. I got all my school required, which was 10. And he was so elated. And I'm like, you know that every research that I've done, you need a minimum of 200 before your senior year. And that's the look he gave me right there, Tara. He was like, oh, he goes, I don't have time to do that. There's no way I'm going to do that. And so I approached it very differently. And since then, we've really gotten very good at helping the students understand why this is so important. When students are serving others, they take the finger off of them and point it towards others. So it gives them room to figure out and discover who they are. Now, not all service is considered equal. If you sign up and show up, is that really essay worthy? Probably not. So we help the student first find out what are their passions, what do they want to see changed in the world, and then we help bridge that and help them lead other students across the United States to create the change they wish to see in the world. Why is this important? They find out, do I like to lead or follow? Do I want a desk job, or do I want, a job where I'm selling every different day? They figure out, do I like people? Some don't even like people. Like you need to know this, right?
Yes,
so
I love that.
They're finding out a lot about themselves while serving their community. So I started Passion with a Purpose 12 years ago because, in my opinion, if every 17-year-old graduated high school with 200 service hours, this world would be a very different place. And so I do it just mainly on the principal and the benefit to the student and the benefit to the community. So we lead them step by step on how to do that, because it's not intuitive to a teenager on how to do that. It's quite stifling. And so it is really critical, because if there's a student who is a good student academically, and they have great letters of recommendation, and they have a similar GPA and test score, what is that standout factor? How are they going to be picked to go to that college? Well, they have to let the college know why they should pick them. And because we've done such a great job as parents telling them, don't brag, don't boast, people don't like it. Now we're telling them, brag all you can, sell it, tell them what. And we're just like, they're like, what are you talking about? I can't brag. That's awful. And so we spend a lot of time pulling out what they think is just their normal life. I have students who have led amazing projects, and they're like, yeah, I signed up. I did this, no big deal. And remember, colleges don't know them like we do. They only get that one chance to make that first impression.
Love it. Love it. So Margin was asking, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. She said, is CSF and NHS memberships important?
So good, better, and best. They're good. Better would be to lead it as president, and best would be start their own.
Interesting. Do you have any follow-up questions on that, Margin?
When you say start their own, you mean start their own club?
Yeah, start their own national club, not a club at school. So there is a ranking system in college, and they get points for leadership. They get points for starting an organization, for growing an organization, and for leading others to build that organization. To start a club at school is not hard. You go into the ASB, you sign a form, you get a few buddies. They understand it's not that impressive. CSF and NHS are national organizations. The problem is, at some schools, everybody gets a trophy. Everybody gets in, and it's just hang out and have pizza, and it's not a big deal. At some schools, you have to apply every single year, keep a certain GPA, write essays to get in. The problem is they don't know which one your student's in.
What are some other examples of national clubs other than NHS and CSF that you know from the top of your head?
Yeah, so Key Club, being part of the Rotary Club, the Elks Club, some of the bigger national organizations that are very large in nature that are not easy to join at school. Anything that's easy to join at school did not take much effort on the student in the college opinion. So going out or creating their own, like in College Ready, we have several students, probably half of our students, that have started their own Passion with Purpose and have grown it to a national organization. That is best. Can every student do that? No way. But if they don't do that, then they need to have an internship. If they don't do that, they need to do a research project and write a research paper. If they don't do that, they need to be a publisher or an artist of a book that was published. So it's whatever they can do to make themselves unique and set themselves apart. You know, every school treats it differently, and that's the tough part. On the East Coast, those clubs are not anything like they are on the West Coast. And that makes it hard for the colleges. That's a really good question.
That's very interesting. And I like what you said about the Passion with Purpose project, because I'm big into personality tests and figuring out what people's strengths are and what their weaknesses are. And not that their weaknesses can improve, but if they are naturally good at something and passionate about it at the same time, let them focus there. You know, like you were saying, Margin's son or whoever may not be the kind of person that would start their own club, but they might be really good at a research project or really good at writing and getting things published or whatever. So I think identifying those key strengths is so, so, so important. I love that you do that.
Remember back in the day, and this will date me a little bit, we had home ec, we had auto shop, we had all of the trades. And you would know, like, I'm good at building a car, or I'm great at baking, or what life skills. These students now are so heavy in academia that they don't know what else they're good at because it takes so much time to be good at it. And so we tap into areas. I've had students, I'll ask, what are you passionate about in the last series? Siri, what am I passionate about? Like, I just don't even know. It's out of control, really. And then I'll ask another student and they'll say, well, let's see. I want to flip real estate. I want to buy my first rent. I want to fix it up and then I want to flip it. And I'm like, where are your parents? Like, you know what's going on, you know, there's a lot of influence but that's unfortunately, if the parents aren't talking about a dinner table, which is hard to get them to sit down at, the high's not doing it. So then who is doing it? And that's why we have really focused in on how to help them help themselves, I think is the best way to put it. They just don't know where to start. And it's scary. It's even as adults, it's hard to really self-identify. So we guide them through that.
I love that. See, and I wish someone had done that with me when I was a kid. I took some kind of test that told me that I should be a police officer. And my dad said, the only reason it says that is because you hate being told what to do. You want to tell everybody else what to do. I am not a police officer. And I'm a nutritionist and line dance teacher. I don't think they talked to me about that in school, but I figured it out just a little later than I wish I had. I could, than I could have or should have.
Yeah.
So that's so cool to have a coach to help you ask questions, to help you identify things that you don't know.
So
right?
here's another freebie that you can take home. And I feel sorry for your son, but here you go. When you have your child, when they're not distracted, phone in the drawer, kind of non-distracted, ask them, if I gave you $1 million cash, and you had to spend it in 24 hours or give it back, what would you do with it? You will learn so much about what's going on and how they understand or don't understand money. I've had students say, I'd buy a yacht, 2 houses, an airplane, fly my friends to France. Like, you're like, whoa. And then you have other students who I would just give it all away. There's just no concept there. So we spend time helping them understand return on investment. College is an investment. It is not just a party. And so we help them understand that a loan equals working for free. And they're like, well, I don't want to work for free. And I'm like, well, either do your parents. And they're like, well, what? Like, I don't understand what you're talking about. And so helping them understand that doesn't make sense to spend $75,000 a year for a women's studies degree may not be the best college fit for that major or for that student. So we really help them to drill down and think about, when you move out, how much will that cost? Whoa, that's a big concept, electricity and car insurance and all of that. And then we talk about, okay, so when you move out and then you have all of that responsibility, how much do you need to make? Can you make that without a college degree? And if so, how long will it take you? So we weave all of this life reality into them so they can really help guide what is a return on investment for them and what is the purpose of that college education. My entrepreneurs are my favorite. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I love it. But they're great. They think they're the next Zuckerberg. I'm just going to graduate and boom, I'm like this
Right.
multi-millionaire.
Yes.
So I could go on and on, but they're so much fun because they have this big vision. They just don't know how to harness it and to move it forward. And sometimes that's the hurdle for some of the students. They don't know what they want to be. They don't know what they want to major in. They don't know what is the best college. And that's what we do, because as a parent of 4, don't know about you, my students here want. When I talk as a mom, and then I have a stranger tell them, and I'm like, I've told them that 100 times. And
Exactly.
it's a little challenging for sure.
Yeah. So we have a question from Elisa. She said, UCI, I know it's very hard to get into, over 100,000 applicants. Any suggestions?
Yeah, stand out. You got to be different. Absolutely picking the right major at that school will make all the difference in the world. And being non-UCI is critical. There's a typical UCI student, and they're trying to diversify because you can only have so many engineers. You can only have so many gamers. You can only have, you know what I mean? So they can't bring on more engineers or what they're truly known for. They have to have English and they have to have the arts. And so helping the student to be whatever they are uniquely is how to get into a school like that. This year, the average GPA to get into UCLA was a 4.7.
Whoa.
Yeah, and they had more applicants than ever. Now, my son who went to Harvard had a 4.6. Yeah.
Wow.
So when I say it's competitive, I'm not joking. It's gotten out of control. What happened this year, you may be fascinated. So everybody in California was wondering, do I send my kid off to school and pay online while they're living at home? And whoa, this makes no sense at all. We're going to apply to the UCs. Well, what happened is every student applied to every UC.
Oh, great.
Yeah. And so we had this bottleneck of the most massive wait list we've ever seen before because they just had too many students. They just could not admit them all. And then once the Ivies released and COVID started opening up, we're starting to see more students go that direction. But it was all of the California students who would have gone Ivy that stayed at home that really messed it up for students who typically get into our UCs. On the flip side, though, we didn't have our international students taking up our UC spots. So there was this yin and this yang going on. And so it was very interesting. But the wait list was definitely very prominent this year. And it was because I had students, on average, our students apply to 4-Reach, 4Comfort, and 4Safety. That is a very solid strategy. Do not let your student apply to all reach. It does not turn out well for anybody. And on average, our students get into 9 colleges, which gives them a really awesome opportunity for the dream, the comfort, and the safety, from no money to some money to a full ride. So they have this beautiful strategy, and then I help them negotiate their financial offers. Another bonus for being here. If you get a financial offer at one school, you can take it to another college and ask for a financial reconsideration. So we help our students do that. They can get off the wait list. There is a strategy to do so. So that can be done. So we help them do that. So all of these things that they're having to jump through for hurdles makes it very hard for these youngsters to navigate it on their own. And that's why I'm out trying to reach the community and wanting to help families, just so kids can understand that it's never been this hard. This is like as hard as it's ever been. And unfortunately, kids were doing a ton of stuff during COVID, so they're not going to get away with, I couldn't because of COVID. It's just not going to fly. It's going to really hurt them. So we need to get those students who were hoping that was the situation, get them caught up very quickly, because it's going to play out that way.
And something that you said just made me remember, Margin shared that a lot of teachers at Mission Viejo High School were saying that they will not do letters of recommendation for students that have had their cameras off all year.
Ooh.
Because it's not a recommendation at Mission Viejo High School, or I'm sorry, it's not a requirement. Mrs. Osborne was like, we really want them to, but we're not going to force it because we don't know their home situation and whatever. But apparently the teachers are like, if you've had your cameras off all year.
And this is me, I'm a teacher at Mission Viejo High School, so I know firsthand that I've been hearing, especially our science department. Teachers are saying the ones that do not have their videos on, they are not going to write them a letter of recommendation.
Ouch. That is news to me. So thank you for sharing that. I will let all my students know.
Yeah, numerous times we're asking them to have their cameras on. Now, my situation is I mandate cameras. I give participation points for cameras, but some teachers are like, I don't want to fight it. I just won't write them a letter of recommendation.
That's so, oh man, that is such an important piece. That's going to hurt some students big time. Yeah. Wow.
So thank you for that, Margin. That's really interesting. So Risa asked, my daughter's a junior and currently is interested in becoming a therapist. Is there a college that she should be looking at more closely than others? I don't think she needs Harvard for that career path, correct? And clearly her service house should be focused in that area too, like suicide hotline.
So having a standout strategy that tells colleges about all of her. It doesn't all have to be micro focused on, I want to be a therapist, because keep in mind, most students, 3 out of 5, change their major at least twice. So it would be really detrimental if they focus, senior year, they wake up and they go, well, therapy's not really in the cards anymore. I'm thinking now I want to get, you know what I mean? Like all of a sudden you're at a huge disadvantage. It's more important to really display all that the student is. Are they tenacious? Are they passionate? Are they quiet? Are they a best friend? Do they love their grandparents? Like colleges really want, I know it sounds weird, but they really want to know, will the student be successful at the school? because you have to remember college is a business. They need your money as much as you need them. And if your student is successful and they see that diploma on their wall, all of a sudden everybody's equating, wait, that person went to UCLA and they're very successful. So they only want students they think are going to thrive. And not every student needs a top tier school. Absolutely not. My daughter's story is hilarious because who wants to follow Harvard? Not me, right? That's awful. They're 4 years apart. And she says, Mom, my dream school is University of Alabama. And we're from Southern California. And I'm like, why? She goes, duh, the football. I'm like, you're to play football? And she was not amused. Yeah, she was not amused whatsoever. So, helping them really show them is super important. I don't know too many teenagers who get really excited about feeding the homeless. But if somebody wants to be a therapist and is interested in why people are homeless because of mental illness, that's a totally different thing. But if it's a sign up, show up, you have to go do this, that is not going to benefit them when they go to apply to college. It will maybe in hours, but not in telling colleges anything about them or what's important to them.
So I have a question. Being that GPA is the top priority, how do colleges and universities differentiate the GPA from various high schools? Also, do college units from a community college have more of a wow factor than AP courses?
Okay, so I'll take the first part first. There is a regional representative for every university, and they have a pocket of all the schools and they know everything about them. So that's number one. Number two is the high school counselor must write all of the details about how many APs are offered or not offered, if they can't take an AP until their junior year, like all of the rules and regulations, because kids can't be held accountable if the school doesn't offer it, right? And then I have a school in Fallbrook that does smiley faces and sad faces. Margin, that might make you a little crazy, but that's a toughie, right? How do you, there's no GPA with that. But that particular school, people understand how that equates to a GPA. And so it really comes down to, is the student fully utilizing all the resources available at their school? So if you're in Irvine School District attending one of the many brilliant Irvine high schools, it is insane. If you do not have a student who really likes to compete, do not move to Irvine and put him at one of those high schools. It is so much pressure. I have a student right now with a 5.0 GPA, and she got a 36 on her ACT her freshman year, first time she took it, and she is 5th in her class.
Wow.
At Irvine. And I'm like, oh, that's crazy. So to answer your next question, dual enrollment is the most impressive because you get to get it on your high school GPA and you get college credit. So you're double dipping, right? Because if you take community college, it doesn't help your high school GPA. It's good, but is it helpful? Those are the things I always tell students. Make sure that there's a reason why you're taking that community college class. Is it an essay that you're trying to write? But don't do it because you think it looks better. If their high school GPA is not good, that's not going to be enough. They first look at the high school GPA and then they look at the other stuff.
Okay. And kind of going along with since we're talking about community college, we have another question. Can you talk to us about strategies to get through community college as quickly as possible to transfer?
Yeah, super important on this one. Wow, you need 60 units. As soon as you take one class, you need 60 units. How fast can you get 60 units?
Really?
And And the hard part is you need to know where you're going to transfer to, because not all classes transfer to every other school. You can't say, I just want to get my AA and then transfer, because half of your units may not go to UCLA that go to Texas A&M. So you really need to have a full-blown strategy to transfer. Very important, because your colleges, they're no longer, remember, they treat your student as an adult, and you're nobody. You can't ask a question. You can't make a phone call. There's nothing to help them except them. And so they need to make sure that every single thing they take is going to fulfill a requirement to get them to the next school. So it really has to be planned. It can't be, I'm just going to take some classes at community college, get my 60 units and move on. No way, Jose. Won't work.
So I have a question, because I went to Saddleback for a while, several years ago, and I just remember it was kind of like a hangout spot, and it was just a thing that kids did that didn't really, they were a little more aimless. And I was like, well, it's good that they're taking classes rather than not at all, right? But when they're finally ready to transfer, whenever that is, in this day and age, is it going to be so much harder? Is that what you're saying, for them to get into a school that they would really like to get into?
Well, number one, they only have a GPA, right? So if they're aimlessly chilling, that GPA is probably not getting them into that top tier transfer school.
Right.
Most students at a community, not all, most students at a community college are there because their parents said, if you want to live in my house, you either have to go to college or you have to have a job. You can't just sit on the couch and play games all day. So what happens is these kids go to college, but do they really embrace the education? And do they have a plan to exit? The plan to exit is the missing piece to success. So I work with transfer students all the time. Every time a student transfers, it costs you $100,000. Yeah.
Seriously?
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah, it is painful because they're taking classes and spending time that they shouldn't have been. And that's
Right.
so frustrating for that student, because usually they're at community college because they haven't really found their thing yet. And they're not really excited about,
Or
going to
school.
school.
Yeah.
It's more like, I have to go, I have to be here. And then to tell them after 2 years, I'm sorry, only half your classes will transfer. You need to stick it out longer. They're like, no way, I'm out.
That would
Yeah.
be so frustrating.
I've had many a student meeting where I had a student in tears, where they were defeated. And the thing is they're like, why didn't anybody tell me? And that's the hardest part, is there is nobody who's a gatekeeper at the community college.
So
That's where it's tough.
with that in mind, somebody asked the question, would you recommend working with the community college counselor or the counselor at the school you want to attend for transferring?
Well, a parent can't talk to any of them. So if a student is a planner and a go-getter, they should talk to both. The hardest part is most community college students don't know where they want to go. They're at a community college most of the time because they're still not sure of their major, or it's money, or they just don't know the dream school that they want to graduate from. And therefore they usually can't talk to that where they're go, because they don't know it yet. So the sooner you get to know that transfer school and you have a destination, it's like playing darts with a dartboard or playing darts on a wall. You just keep throwing them and throwing them and throwing them. You're like, I can't get out of this game. Same type of thing with community college. You need to have the strategy and the plan and understand the bullseye is the quickest way to win the game.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's
Otherwise,
the easiest, the least painless, probably the least expensive, because you're not just
yeah.
Paying for classes that you don't need or that won't transfer or whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was a great question.
Yeah. Okay. So to keep us on time at 7:54, and I promised everybody an hour. So Jennifer Browder asked one last question, and then I'm going to put Shellee's contact info in the chat. If anybody's interested in reaching out and chatting with her more, I'm going to put her phone number as well as her email address. So the last question, Shellee, is what do you recommend students do during the summer before sophomore and junior year in terms of preparing for college, etc.?
Yeah, do things to test what they think they want to do. Best advice anybody ever gave me and what I give my students. If they're thinking about being a dentist, they need to spend time in the back room of a dental office. If they want to be a writer, they need to be published in a newspaper or magazine. They need to test the water, because until you do it, a perfect example is I wanted to be an attorney, and I thought attorneys defend people and they get in front of a judge and just defend them. That's what I thought they did, until I did an internship and they put me in a very dark room with a lot of books. And I'm like, I'm out. This is awful. That's what kids need to understand is it's not all glamour. It's not all what you see on TV. So the best thing they can do over the summer, other than test prep, is internship, research project, write a book, whatever their gift is, let them deeply explore it and spend time with people who are doing it. Neighbors, brothers, sisters, friends, cousins, really have them reach out and try it, because I will tell you 9 out of 10 students change their mind. Yeah, there's very few who really stick with it the whole way through, because it's just not as glamorous as TV makes it.
Yes.
CSI was a really big one, just for a good laugh for at the end. We went through a stage 2 years ago where every student wanted to be this crime investigator. And it was like, I'm like, what is going on here? And they made it look so fun on TV. And then when they found out what they really had to do day in and day out, they're like, no, that's not what I want to do. So that's a perfect way to sum up. Help your student learn about themselves is so critical, because that's what really colleges want. They need artists, they need mathematicians, they need historians, they need them all. It's not one is better than another, and that's not going to get them in. They just need to have a standout, unique strategy that's different from everybody else.
Yes, I so agree. I remember when I was in ninth grade, I was like, I'm going to be a computer programmer. In my cocky little ninth grade mind, I thought I was good with computers, so therefore I could be a computer programmer. And my math teacher was like, you don't like anything higher than algebra. How are you going to be? I was like, oh, you're right. Never mind.
I think most people can, yeah.
Kids need to be brought back down to earth. They do. They have these grand, delusions of grandeur, and we got to show them what real life actually looks like. So
Gently, very gently.
Exactly. So, I so enjoyed this. Shellee, you're a wealth of information, and you make it seem so easy. You just fielded every question, no problem. That was awesome. Jennifer posted thank you. Elisa said thank you. So I think people got a lot out of this. I'll speak for everybody because I know I did. So thank you for doing this. I think we should do another one in the near future and just keep seeing who's free to that night and free the next time. And maybe people on here will talk about it and how good it was, and we'll get some more parents. So, for those of you that are here because of MVHS, I think a lot of you are. I'm most likely going to be the PTA president again next year, and so Shellee and I have plans to do this again when school starts, so that incoming freshman parents can hear this information and all of that. So anyway, be on the lookout for my newsletter email. And I, again, really, really, really appreciate you guys being here. And thank you so much, Shellee. You're awesome.
My
And
pleasure.
I put her contact info, her email, and her phone number. So feel free to reach out.
Yeah, I'm happy to chat. And even if you just want a copy of my best-selling book, How to Send Your Student to College Without Losing Your Mind or Your Money, just send me a text and I'll send you a copy. It's just, I wrote it so people who don't have the means can still navigate the process. So my heart is to serve our community. I grew up in Laguna Beach, so I'm an Orange County kid myself. And so I have a real big heart for the students here. So thank you for your time.
Love it. Have a great night, everybody.
Okay,
Talk to you
bye.
soon. Bye, guys.
Bye.